This is BJJhood, tapping into Jiu-Jitsu lives on and off the mats.
Hello. We are back with the BJJhood podcast. I'm Babby, your host.
And I'm Shay, your co-host.
We're here to share inspirational stories about women in Jiu-Jitsu and how the martial art changed their lives. You know already we're on YouTube with subtitles in Portuguese for all the interviews that are in English and subtitles in English for all the interviews that are in Portuguese. So make sure you go there and you follow us. And also on Instagram, that's where we are going to post all our new episodes, our new guests, and some information about them. So make sure you're following us there too at BJJhood Podcast. And also follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss any of the new episodes. If you like this episode, make sure you share with your friends so they also don't miss it. Today with us, Maggie Grindatti Lira. She's an American grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt competitor. Maggie is also a gym owner, and we're going to talk about the programs that she has here today. She's a multiple times world champion, Pan Am's, American Nationals, and all colored belts. Maggie is also a 2022 European Open champion, ADCC West Coast Trial medalist, and a World and Pan Nogi black belt medalist. It's a huge curriculum of competitions and also much more that she does. Maggie, welcome to the BJJhood podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to be able to obviously share a little bit about me, but more importantly, keep female jiu-jitsu in the face, in the eye of people, and just keep spreading our word and our stories and just our impact on jiu-jitsu as a community.
I love that. We're going to start with all the changes that have been happening. If you follow Maggie on social media, she posted recently that she was retiring from competitions, and she just did. We're recording this episode now in December. It's December 12th. Just so you know. And she just did Words No-Gi last week. And we want to start with that. Tell me how you feel after all those emotions, after fighting one last time, because I hope you're going to come back at some point, but at least for now, how are you feeling right now?
I feel really good. I feel light. I feel clear. So I definitely know that I made the right choice. It was a really hard choice to make, which I think anyone who has done it knows, who has done it and came back knows, or those who are, thinking about it. It's always really hard, sometimes impossible to know when the right time to walk away is. But it was just for me about the pros and cons and the this and that and the here and there's, just weighing everything in my life out and just getting to that realization that, okay, being an athlete, that phase, I don't even know if you call it a phase, that life of mine, because it's been my entire life, is coming to an end. It's coming to a close. And it just overall, it just feels like the right time. And I've known that actually even before retiring, ever since I announced it, it was kind of like a weight lifted off the shoulders. And then all the emotions that people might have saw at the World Championships was happy tears, grateful tears, proud tears, so many emotions. But I really don't think any of those tears had any ounce of sad in them. So I'm definitely very happy and very secure with my decision.
How did you feel like stepping on last time there, like right before the matches? I also saw that you posted recently about all the little things that were happening with your uniform, that they made you like change your clothes a bunch of times. But like, I know you talk about the gratitude that you feel of being there, and the happiness, but like, how did it feel? Like, you really wanted to win? You were more happy just to be there? I know there's a little different on those feelings too. I'm not I compete. I'm not a high level competitor, on adult or anything like that. But I know it's like, it could be different. Sometimes you're just happy to step on the mats and just being there. Sometimes you really want to win and you have that focus. And I don't think that was your idea this time, right?
Right. Yeah. No, and truthfully, it hasn't been for kind of the last 3 years. as much as I know the level at black belt is very challenging, I don't doubt that I could be on the top of the podium every single time if I was training the way that, the other professional athletes are training. For me, the last 3 years, it's just been the back and forth with my business because I've been a black belt now for 4 years. And at the end of my brown belt career is really when my business started taking over and just the demand from athletes, was just more of the priority for multiple reasons. One, it will always be my first passion. Long before jiu-jitsu, I was an athlete, and long before jiu-jitsu, I have always been into fitness. Even in college, after having kind of real strength and conditioning coaches, they were definitely, and that time was definitely my biggest inspiration of that's what I wanted to do. And then when I started jiu-jitsu after college, I was like, okay, I definitely want to get a little bit more specific with jiu-jitsu. Granted, that has taken me to like a million different sports, but obviously because of the community I'm in and obviously my success as a jiu-jitsu athlete, majority of those I train are in jiu-jitsu. So it's always been very easy for me to choose Champion Fit, my business first, in a sense of I can't train twice a day because I only have the middle of the day open. So I can't make that early morning or evening training, So there's always been that factor. Champion Fit pays my bills and it always has. Jiu-jitsu, yes, there are, the 000 or 0.001 athletes that are living solely off of jiu-jitsu, and then there's, I feel like the middle ground, which is kind of where I came in, where yes, my career took off because of jiu-jitsu, but I also do get paid when I fight. I also do travel the world to do seminars, so I do make money off of jiu-jitsu. But at the end of the day, without Champion Fit, I wouldn't have the roof over my head. So obviously there's those two aspects that have gone into it. My battle the last couple of years was having all the success I did at the lower belts while I was training more full time. Regardless, that now that I have a losing record at black belt, people still kind of expect you to win, or definitely want to see you win. So regardless of how I walk into a tournament or a fight, there's always eyes on me, And I always give a good fight, so like that's great. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted to win the fight, but I also didn't want it more than the girls I'm fighting. And one of my last super fights that I did, I want to say maybe it was 2021 or end of 2020. One of my corners, he was, and this was after a year already kind of losing at black belt. And one of my professors was like, it's not technique, it's not speed, it's who wants it more. And that was such a turning point for me in both directions. It didn't motivate me to like go quit my job and work harder on the mats. It kind of made things clear to me like, okay, it is true because that's how I always won. I've never been the more technical athlete. I just walked in there like, I'm not going to lose. And so it shifted my mindset in a fact like, okay, I'm not walking into these fights like that anymore. So if I am going to fight, I need to make sure I'm walking in differently. And that was a turning point for me because, like I said, it wasn't motivation to want it more. It was motivation to change my mindset walking into the fight, enjoying fighting, enjoying competing, enjoying being an athlete rather than focused on winning. So since 2021, so a good 2 years, I have been fighting with incredible peace. Getting onto the podium, sometimes to the top of the podium. But when I would lose, there wasn't that big meltdown after, or the loss of sleep at night. And it just came to a place that, I just was more at peace. And then obviously, as time goes by, it was really when I started kind of losing to girls that I've never lost to before. you know? And that was another deciding factor where it's like, okay, even these girls that I literally used to have to not watch film on, didn't really need to warm up. I could use them as a warm up fight. Now we're starting to either match me or beat me, you know? And it was just like, okay, now it's at the point where I'm placing myself in a position that I feel I was kind of taking away the professionalism of jujitsu. Because we always, if we're watching professionals, we want to see the best fights. And I'm always going to be a hard fight. But these girls who are going in there wanting to win, I don't need to be taking energy from them. You know, I would rather see them in the semifinals and finals with a lot of energy and see two girls going head to head battling a little bit more fresh. And that's something that a part of my retirement, definitely I want to have influence in a lot of ways, but that is definitely one of them, and kind of knowing your place in the world of professional jiu-jitsu, because again, I'm masters. I have the option to go to masters 1 and compete there. I don't feel like it's fair for me to be going into these tournaments with girls who are training super hard for this, and 1, maybe beating them and then losing next round, you know. 2, like I said, draining their battery, or maybe they're going to get injured. And of course, that's not my responsibility, but as a female in our sport and wanting the female professionalism to increase, I do see that as a factor that's just not necessary. It's kind of like when you see, this might be sensitive for some people, but when you see like the top 10 ranking at the end of the year, I could have been on that. I could have flown to an open every single weekend and gone to the super heavy division and got first or second place with 2 girls and worked my way up to the ranks. You know, it's all these little things that are happening in our sport that are slowing down it being more professional or keeping it from becoming more professional. You know, so that was another big reason for me. And of course, my retirement is from professional jiu-jitsu. I'm not saying I will never compete again and maybe at that level, but I know where I'm at in the next 2 or 3 years. If I go to compete, it'll be for fun and it'll be in the masters division, you know. Um, so walking into the tournament this weekend, walking onto the mat this weekend, I was very happy. I was very excited. I was very at peace. And I was stepping on those mats to retire, not to win. So for me, the outcome did not matter at all. I think if anyone saw my fight, you know, she got on my back, she choked me. I think I had a smile on. You know, there was nothing that was going to, you know, if I wanted to win, you know, that badly, it might not be the right time to stop, you know? So that was another thing for me, that the feeling of everything this past weekend was definitely reassurance that I'm doing the right thing.
That's awesome.
I'm curious, you kind of like mentioned the moment of getting tapped out. Like, what was going through your head during that moment? Because you were like creeping up to get out of, you know, guard, right? And then it was like a quick like turnaround. I mean, it was a split second. Like, what was going through your head?
It's such a good question, because when I tell people what was going through my head, they think I'm crazy. But I truthfully feel like this is a healthy relationship with jujitsu, because I personally have witnessed a lot of unhealthy relationships with jujitsu where people who probably should step down or quit just don't, you know, or not quit. I don't like saying that word. Never say never. But again, professionalism of it. Most sports take certain requirements to get there, and ours doesn't really. So in that moment, I was actually winning the fight, you know, and I tend to be a very strategic fighter in IBJJF. And there is moments in the fight that I could have done other things. So when I was in that moment, the first thing I thought of was, do I really want to fight the next fight? Because here's the other thing too. I did not even train for this. It's not like I'm not training as much as these girls. This last year, again, lots of changes. I got kicked out of fight sports, and rather than finding a new gym, we took in Atos that is in San Diego and bought a gym for strength and conditioning. So we've been doing what we can. But that was the other thing. Like, I was in no like really shape to be fighting these matches. And The other thing is the girl that I was fighting. So she's somebody that we have fought for years now. And the fight I would have been going into next, I had never fought the girl. And I truthfully didn't want to lose and retire to somebody I'd never fought, if that makes sense. I don't, if you watched like Liz, the girl I fought, when I retired, she actually kind of cried with me when I hugged her. So regardless of if I gave up or gave in or whatever it was, it definitely happened the way it was supposed to. Because the more I think about retiring to somebody like her, actually the next two fights, obviously retiring as a world champion would have been cool. But if I would have lost either of the two next fights, I would have been retiring to somebody that I didn't have a past with. So I'm really happy that I was on the mat with somebody that I have history with, a good relationship, and that actually kind of shared those emotions with me. So there was a lot going through my head, but it was more so like, I came here for one reason, and it was to get off the mats. And she actually went on to win. And I think this was her first world title. So, like,
Aw.
clearly it was exactly how it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think it's so cool when you talk about it, like the way that you are also thinking about the other girls too. Not selfish on just being you, like it's my moment, it's my retirement, or it's like my moment on the mats. No, you're always thinking about the other women too, and like what that represents for them when you're doing things. I'm not saying, of course, you didn't lose because you wanted to lose, you know, but it's like the way that you come up with, it's like at least I lost to somebody that makes sense for me in that moment. Losing, uh I'm not going in there to take the moment from anybody else. Like you're always trying to bring that, and I think that's really important for us women in jiu-jitsu to have that mindset too, that it's like you don't need to be just like facing and trying to beat everybody. Like we're here together, we're here to make this sport grow, and of course we all want our wins, but at some point we're gonna lose, and that's totally fine. That's somebody else that it's also working really hard on the other side and trying to get to that same point that we are, that's the highest on the podium. So I think having that mindset that it's not really common on our sport, it's amazing. And it's good for us to take something from that too and learn, okay, if I lose, that's fine. That other girl is also working really hard. And look at her. She got to the first place. She got her word title. Like she deserved that, right? Like it was her moment. I think that's awesome too. Do you have a question, Nishi?
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's a beautiful concept of giving back. You see it in a lot of different sports. My family's really into motorcycle racing, like motocross, and there was recently this past year kind of the same kind of thought. It's amazing how strategic you were within the fight, going through that process, right? And still fighting at the same time, if you think about it. But they displayed the kind of the same thing. The leader was, number one, he was going through, and he within the race was calculating, if I get second, it will put the person behind me in front of me, which then in the end will create a bigger distance between my next opponent. So it's just amazing at being at that top level and being able to calculate those risks and to determine like what your outcome is as you're physically trying to fight. Like I go blank when when I'm just rolling. So that's like crazy for you to be able to do that.
That's definitely the experience. Yeah. I can have full conversations with myself on the mat when I'm competing.
That's awesome. I don't think I can do that too. Like all that thinking. I'm like, I'm gonna try to focus on one specific thing right now and try to make that right. If I have a lot of thoughts, like I don't even know what's gonna happen. I wanted to ask like how life it's gonna look like nowadays. I know you have been going through this change for 3 years, like now. But what it's like next for you? How do you see yourself getting into 2024?
I think just like finally committing to my business 100%. I'm super happy with how much it's grown and how far I've come with it. So now, for the first time, to give it 100%, I can't wait to see what I do with that. And I'm excited for all of like the different ways that I want to grow with it too, because I really, more than anything, my goal is to stay very involved in the community of jiu-jitsu, because I feel like we need that. And what I mean by that is we don't always need more athletes, right? And I feel like in jiu-jitsu, something that obviously it's growing like incredibly, but there is definitely still sometimes that like 50-50 choice. It's like, okay, do I go after the athlete thing, or do I do this? When I feel like we need more people coming into our community wanting to bring in new markets and new opportunities and new ways to make it more professional, because truthfully, the less athletes we have, the more professional jiu-jitsu becomes. Of course, it's amazing that jiu-jitsu allows everybody to compete, and that's what makes it different than anything else. But we have divisions and whatnot for that. When I think of my role in the sport, I do want to look at it more towards, the athlete side, the professional side, in a sense of coming in and doing the strength and conditioning for athletes. That's definitely what I want to do, or what I plan on doing in 2024 is sponsoring some of the top ranked athletes through strength and conditioning, just to add that extra edge. Because again, if you look at any other sport in the world, there's coaches for each different specific area. And recent times now, the coaches are finally getting some recognition, in a sense of, Danaher, Melky Galval, the Mendez brothers clearly do amazing. When I'm looking at people who are just coaches, obviously there's the ones that compete and coach, but they're still competing, right? So they still have that little bit of that in them, rather than being able to just focus on athletes 100%. And that's what I want to be able to do. On top of, the hobbyists that I train at my gym, it's everybody from Miami. It's not just athletes, so of course I want to change people's lifestyles through my business, but I also do want to be involved in our community, helping it become more and more professional, and definitely focusing on the females, for sure.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you, as a coach and also as an athlete, and then thinking about a tournament like World's No Gate's a big tournament. How do you prepare yourself for what recommendations would you have for other girls that are maybe don't have a coach for strength? How would you prepare for those big tournaments? Like, is there a different focus? Should you try to match like your training at the school with your strength training? Is there like, when it's get closer to the day of the matches, would you take a little bit off of that strength training? Also, I know you're probably involved with that too, like your nutrition, your mental health. Like, what are those little things that you can do to get there more prepared for that competition?
Right. I mean, we can't not be our best selves in life without help. And that's something that most people learn later on in life, sometimes too late. But it's all about knowing what you're good at and advancing in that, becoming an expert at what you're good at, focusing on what you're good at, and letting people help you in the areas that you're not good at, or investing in areas, that you're not good at, right? So if I think of myself, I'm obviously very good at strength and conditioning, the body of science, all of that. I'm also very good at management, in a sense of a gym. Those are two things I'm really good at. When it comes to, let's say, the marketing side of things, I hate marketing. So I'm going to hire somebody for marketing, right? Content creating, I like to do it. I usually have the good ideas, but I don't want to take the 4 hours to do the one video. So, okay, I'm going to hire somebody there, somebody to manage my. So it's about creating a team to make you your best self, because you're never going to be able to do it on your own. So for those who are really looking, obviously I came from a more business mindset, but for an athlete, right, you need to have, your pie chart, right? And you have, okay, here's sleep, here's mental, here's physical, here's jujitsu. So it's like, okay, for sleep, how do I make that work? Okay, here's my sleep schedule. When it comes to my mental, right? Who do I talk to? Who do I go to? Because we know, especially as females, I think every female has cried on the mat, right? We all do it. It's not something that really ever goes away. We all have our moments crying on the mat. It's like you need to make sure you have somebody in your space that you're able to go talk to. And if it's not a therapist, it can be, a higher belt. It can be the owner of the gym. But it's going to be very important to get to your elite level to make sure you have somebody that you can talk to about your mindset, a coach, a mental coach, whatever it may be. Same thing with physical training. And yeah, of course, if you can afford it, you get your own coach. You can come talk to me, whatever it may be. But if not, there's going to be someone in your gym, that you see working out or see. Use the resources around you, but never be afraid to ask for help, and make sure you have someone in those areas that you are not an expert at. Once you can do that, once you can let people in, once you can create, a team of people that help you be your best, and you're, of course, probably giving back at the same time, that's what it takes. And that's what we see if you go to an Instagram of any of the top competitors, you're going to see usually a mental coach tagged. You're going to see a video of them working out. You're going to see a video, a picture of them with their coach. You're going to see a video of them doing drills. It's like, if you want to be the best, go look at what the best are doing, right? That's the greatest thing about Instagram. I mean, hopefully, right? Everyone knows me. I like to be transparent. But it's like, that's it. If there's something you want in life, go see somebody who has it, what they're doing, talk to them, figure it out. The resources are everywhere. It's just either being afraid to ask for help or not having the drive or motivation to want to go out and figure it out.
Yeah. I think it's like when you talk about the non-professionalism that it still exists in jiu-jitsu, that's one thing that's really important. I think a lot of the times we think of like, I don't need anybody. Jiu-jitsu is a sport that I can do by myself and it just depends on me. And that's completely wrong. Like for anybody that is in that high level of competition, you need people around you to kind of like support you and give what you need. Like you said, we're good in specific things. We're going to need other people to add to that. And if you don't make that decision, you don't realize that as early as you can, it might take forever. You never achieve that high level that you could, right?
Right. Yeah. Like if you look at any of, the elite athletes in the world, right? Serena Williams, all of, the women, the men, the LeBron Jameses, all of those people. The difference with jujitsu is the way that those athletes were raised. And it goes back to what you were kind of just saying. Jujitsu's on your own, right? You can go to training when you want. You don't have to go to training when you want. But if you really want to be the best, it's not just about showing up every day. You have to be there every day. Like on a normal sport, practice isn't an option. Like if you're not at practice, you're not playing. You're not so it's like, and I think that's why I probably transitioned into the sport and had a lot of success quickly, just based on my background of being an American athlete and what it takes to be an American athlete, because it requires way more than what jiu-jitsu does at this point. At this point, it's not on time, it's early. And if you're not, the whole team is running, or you're asked to go home. Again, like I said, if you miss a day of practice, you're not going, to the tournament. And of course, a lot of the times jiu-jitsu is different because there's the paying member side of it. But most of these professional athletes, they are not paying their gym memberships. And that right there, you should be there every day. If somebody is giving you that type of help, you need to take advantage of it how a professional athlete would.
It's kind of interesting what you're touching on of the professionalism in that aspect, because I came from don't laugh at me, but I came from like a karate background in like the 90s, right? And but it's very different with jiu-jitsu, like me coming in and when I did in 2011, like I was expecting it to be more traditional and have that very much like respect factor. You know, you have your sensei and you guys are all respectful and your uniforms are pristine and your nails are cut and you know what I mean. There was just like a certain part of professionalism when I was in that environment when I was younger, and coming into Brazilian jiu-jitsu there wasn't, and it was always super shocking to me. And I even have like conversations with the professors at my studio, of like, why isn't it like this? It is a martial arts, like why don't we have this type of environment? And it's very minimal. In some of the studios, if you go around, they don't even have like traditional like bowing or anything like that, or like mandatory roll sessions, which is crazy to me. Like I'm like, what? Like what kind of gym is this? That's just my thought and perception, but you touch on something that it is lacking, because you have this like jiu-jitsu for everyone mentality, which kind of makes it really convoluted when you step onto the mats and who you're rolling with and who you're not, even if you're not a professional and you're just a hobbyist.
Yeah, I think it also changes too, because from my gym when I started in Brazil, it was different from the gym that we are at right now. I think because jiu-jitsu is becoming also not it's not anymore that sport that's just for let's fight and just people that are gonna fight and like kill each other. It's going into more of a business right now. There is a lot of this, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I think there's a lot of this little like things like we have in judo of being more strict. It's kind of living on the side, because when you go into business, not a lot of people want to follow all those rules, and then it's harder for you to grow your gym. So I think a lot of the like jiu-jitsu gym owners, they kind of live it on the side a little and not being so strict with it, because they don't want to lose the students, like they don't want to lose those people.
Right. I mean, I think it's from my experience, I think it's about, again, we have to separate the two, right? There's like the pro training and then there's the regular class. I mean, that's at the gyms that I've been at, obviously, as an athlete. I've chosen gyms or gone to gyms where there's the professional training. They have to be different. Again, the pro training is probably going to be 95% nobody's paying, right? And then every other class is 100% everybody's paying. So for like the, let's call it hobby classes, executive classes, for those, I'm much more lenient, because I know a lot of people are coming there for an escape. A lot of people are coming there for therapy. Like you said, it's more of a business. They're not cut. Like if you do too much of this, they're out, like there's a time and there's a place for that. I've had like some of my girls at my old gym. They wanted to train at the night class, and I'm sitting there watching her just like rip people apart, like male white belts. I'm like, I get pro training is hard for you because you're a smaller girl, but you cannot come to the evening class and rip male white belts apart. It's like there definitely needs to be the balance between like, okay, who considers themselves a professional athlete and who is here to train and learn jujitsu, you know? But again, at the end of the day, it's still just a different culture. And for me, we started training jujitsu at our gym because our members were asking for it. And one of my goals this year is to be able to open a completely separate space for jujitsu. And part of what I want to do is I do want to build a team. I do want athletes. And with how I was raised and how I took the sport professionally, through my years of competing, that is the environment that I am going to create during that pro training time. And I'm also somebody like I want to be more interactive with my athletes, because again, it's hard because here it would feel weird. I do this, but most people would feel weird texting their professor and being like, I'm not going to make it to training today, because that's just not, you don't have to do that in jujitsu. Whereas, again, as an athlete in America, you don't text your coach, you're not going to make it. You bring them a doctor note. You're usually sitting on the side watching. You know what I mean? It's very different. And that's the thing, Art. And I think that's what keeps jujitsu from being professional, from it being in the Olympics, from it growing in those ways. It's not, everyone keeps coming up with a new event, a new event, a new event. It's not the events. It's the athletes who aren't consistently taking this seriously in a way that professional athletes are supposed to take something. So that's the thing when it comes to gyms, and having I think the balance of both. If you want that competition, team and name. Of course, there's people who just hobby, and if you want to compete, go for it. That's not their responsibility to kind of overshadow you. But for me as a coach, that's what I want. If you don't text me, you're not going to be here. I'm going to be texting you. Where the F are you? And you better have a good excuse, and you're probably going to get punished for it, especially if you're not paying a membership. It's like if you're going to be representing my team, if you're going to be getting on the mats representing my name, I'm going to hold you to a certain standard, or you can pay your membership and do whatever the F you want.
Especially because you have the other people on the team that need them. It's not like jiu-jitsu is not a type of sport that you can just like, oh, I'm expecting Maggie to come and train with me today, but Maggie didn't show up, didn't tell me that she wasn't going to show up. Like, how am I going to train? I have that time of the day, right?
Exactly. And that happens a lot too when it's not your time. You're like, I can take off. And that's obviously the issue between team sport and individual sport. And people always ask me, because I was always a team sport. And people always ask me, like, oh, do you feel more pressure, with jujitsu? I'm like, no. If I lose, it's my fault. If I win, it's my fault. When I was on a team, if I messed up the pass, if I missed the goal, if I didn't show up, if I was sick, that's pressure. A team not being able to perform because you're not there. But we have to see it like that too. Be that extra body, be the person on the side coaching so they get used to. There's so many things we can do as teammates. Like people want to be like, oh, that's my team. Like some people don't even understand what it means to be a teammate in our sport.
Yeah. How do you think we could change that culture? Like, you come from that different background, and you already have that in mind, and it's kind of automatic for you. But I think for most of us that don't come from that, and especially Brazilians, we're really like we are talking about it before we started, like really relaxed. Like we do the things on our own Brazilian time. It's like super, like how do you change that culture? Like how do you foster that into your gym, and also like for other people that would want to see that change on their gyms too?
It's like I said at the beginning, and as I said, one of my goals going into 2024 is influencing people to bring more markets into jiu-jitsu. It's the same thing. We need less is more in a sense of athletes, but more is more in a sense of resources, right? If you look at a basketball team, how many people on the court? 5. How hard do you think it is to be a professional basketball player? Extremely hard. How many professional jiu-jitsu athletes are there? You can wake up tomorrow and call yourself a professional jiu-jitsu athlete because you compete in adults. That's that's the issue. That's the first issue is not me, that's not my job, but the events need to make it more prestigious to be able to be professional, which of course, like who's number one is doing, because that's an invite thing, but the black belt division of IBJJF, I wouldn't call it professional. At this point, at this point, anybody can sign up. It's easy to get, yes, you need points to do worlds, but it's easy. It takes getting on the podium, which you don't have to fight to do, mind you. So that's definitely the first um, part of it. And then, like I said, coaches like, I mean, I've trained at Danaher's before. He's not texting people, where are you? You know what I mean? But his sole focus is his athletes. That's an invite only gym. You can't go there and pay and sign up. You know, that's what we need. We need more people giving to athletes to put them on a standard that is more professional. You know, so like I said, I want to be the type of coach where you're feared and respected. You know, like, yes, I want to learn under you and I'm going to show up because you scare me a little bit. You know, there, every athlete is a little bit scared of their coach. Unless you show up on time and you put in the work, then there's nothing to be afraid of, you know? And you'll see it. All these people who are on the top of the podium, they are training every day, twice a day. Majority of them don't have other jobs. Majority of them have a very good professor. Like, you see it now. The people at the tops of the podium, it's 5 different teams. You know, it's not Lira BJJ. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the other thing too. Everybody somebody asked me today, when I open a gym, if I plan on being autos. Yes. That's the other way our sport is going to become more professional, is less teams. You know, the more teams that people join, the bigger it gets. And then there can be other types of, you know, like, who's number one, does this team versus that team. You know, then it is becoming a little bit more professional. But again, when you have everybody and their mom opening everybody in your mom jiu-jitsu, it gets hard, you know, because there's not enough resources either. So that's really what I think it is people stepping into the community to want to make it more professional, not better athletes or more athletes.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ego on our sport too, and that might be it, like you said. Yeah, right. Just a lot of it. Um, I wanted to ask Maggie, going into your business now, Champion Fit, how does your programs work, like in person and online? What's the difference? I know you have other athletes, not just jiu-jitsu athletes, but what would be the difference for jiu-jitsu athletes doing your training for other athletes? I wanted to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so there isn't a difference. If you come, you know, to one of my classes tonight, there's going to be jujitsu athletes, there's going to be rugby athletes, there's going to be baseball players, there's going to be grandmas, there's going to be moms, there's going to be brother. It's going to be like across the board. My youngest member is 17 and my oldest is 53. One's a soccer player, one is a mom that's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu and does it because her daughter does. You know, I have a grandma that just works out, and they're all going to work out at the same time. What Champion Fit is and why I developed it is I believe that everybody was made to be athletic, and we just limit our bodies from doing so in multiple ways. One, by not working out. Oh, I do jiu-jitsu, so I don't need to work out. There's that. You know, there's a second thing that people don't know how to work out. So they're doing squats, deadlifts, bench press, you know, the major workout, bicep curls that everybody knows how to do. And they're just doing those over and over again, not knowing there's hundreds of other muscles in the body that need to be focused on, especially as athletes. So it's like for jujitsu, you're in a new position every day. You're in, you know, your arms in a different place every day. So if you're not training every single muscle in your body, how is it going to react when you're playing your sport, and especially for injury prevention? Mainly when I get hurt, it's muscular because my muscle contracted to protect my joint or ligament. And that's what we need our bodies doing. We need every muscle in our body fast, strong, lasting, and ready to be able to protect or perform, of course. So the way that Champion Fit works is it's a 5-day a week program. Each day complements each other. So you can do all 5 days a week and it's not going to take anything away from you. It's not going to be overtraining. You can skip a day and it's not like you're missing something because the other days are going to make up for it. And then I always tell people too that you should, whenever you're doing something for a sport, you should be adding to your sport. So I know a lot of people that will do Olympic lifting, which is kind of the lifts that I just touched upon, or CrossFit to help with their jiu-jitsu. Olympic lifting and CrossFit are both sports. I don't do basketball to get better at soccer, right? So when you're trying to do another sport to get better at your sport, you're actually taking away from it. So that's what I mean. Your strength and conditioning should be adding to it. So, for instance, when my husband and I train, and even when we were at Fight Sports, the pro champion fit would be at 8, and then our pro training would be at 9. So we would go right from our workout onto the mat. And the reason is because champion fit, even though you'll get sore in some areas than other here and there, it's always full body, which most sports are full body. So if I go to the gym and I do leg day, which the next leg day I can do is in 3 days, but I'm going to jiu-jitsu at night, I'm never going to recover. So that's why, for me, especially jiu-jitsu, it doesn't make sense to do body-specific days. Even when I do lifts, Shay knows these, they're 4 rounds of 20 reps, which sounds like a lot, but when do you ever do 1 to 5 reps of anything in jiu-jitsu? You don't. Right? So we need to be creating muscles that aren't just strong, but last. So that's what Champion Fit does is, one, it makes you athletic. It shows your body things you can do that you didn't know you could do. It makes you ready for everyday life. Like, I get it a lot from my normal clients. You know, I have a girl who works on music videos, right? So she's like, carrying my equipment is so much easier now. Like things like that, you know, picking things up. We just limit ourselves, you know, from being athletic. So it does that. And then the slogan is look like an athlete, you know, because that's the body type it will give you. That majority of the population would be cool with having an athletic physique. On top of injury prevention, and that's on the mats and off. So yeah, look like an athlete, perform like a champion. So Champion Fit, it caters towards both people, the average human that just wants to be athletic, and then of course our athletes that want to become champions.
That's great. And Shay did with you that too, the online program. I can let her also speak for it. Like, how was it for you, Shay, to get that that's specific, like, look into yourself and into your daily basis, the way that you're doing? We don't live in Miami, for example. We're in California, but you're also able to get all of that from Maggie too. I'll let you talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm in my second week, and it's an amazing program. Like, I was able to do a workout, you know, and then go to jiu-jitsu the next that night. So in the mornings they work out and the jiu-jitsu at night, and like she was saying, like, it didn't limit me in my roll sessions, and I wasn't dying, you know. I was just sore everywhere, and I just continued that soreness all last week, but it wasn't debilitating, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I can't sit down because I'm so sore, or like my husband can't touch my legs because they're so sore. Getting back into it. And then all of the workouts that she's giving, I can see, at least because I do jiu-jitsu, they are going to help me. And even though I've been doing jiu-jitsu, I've been back how long, Babby? For like almost 3 years now, I think. Almost 3 years. And I have been consistently going to jiu-jitsu. But it's amazing the muscles that you're having me use that I'm not even using necessarily in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh wow.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes they just don't activate.
Yeah. Or you're not using them as frequently, right? But they are mimicking the positions that I would be in jiu-jitsu doing, you know, on a regular roll session. So I'm super excited, and I am sore in places I never thought I would be sore right now. And it is also like, and what I am finding out is I'm not as balanced as I thought I was. You know what I mean? Like, doing jiu-jitsu, you think, oh, I have a lot of balance, I'm agile, and I'm doing these workouts, and I'm like, oh man, I have to step up my game. Like, I'm a little off balance here. So yeah, it's definitely a full body workout that I'm getting. and she provides a great, motivation and check-ins with her programs online. So you're not missing out if you're not in Miami.
Yes, I love that. Maggie, I wanted to ask you, we know that you have been, and like in the last decade, there were big transitions in your life, chapters ending. Like you said, you're pretty open about it, and who follows you have been like following that going on. I wanted to ask you, what were the top 2 challenges that you have experienced, and also your biggest highlights, maybe in the last decade?
Wow, such cool questions. Um, I think my biggest highlights, that one's easier to answer. You know, it's either like my second world title or the last one, because I won gi and no gi worlds every belt color back to back years, and winning purple belt gi worlds, the year after blue belt worlds was very, very like, it was huge and it was hard to believe, because it's that back to back. Like the third time, it was like, okay, but then completing it all, so brown belt worlds would have been the completion of the back to back years in gi and no gi. That was definitely like one of the highlights, of my career, being able to just solidify that for sure. That was cool. And then challenging, I mean, being a female in this sport, especially 10 years ago, it's crazy. Like it feels like all that time didn't pass, you know. But being a female in a male dominant sport is a hard thing to do, But I love a challenge, and I feel like I've done it pretty gracefully, and I've done things with that challenge, that I've accomplished that I feel really good about, and it's not my accomplishments competing, because that was against other females, so it's not that, it's the presence that I had in one of the top gyms in the world, the amount I was on the mat teaching, at the pro training, leading the pro training, the amount of athletes that I trained, strength and conditioning, the athletes that I've been in corners for, so I think the biggest challenge for in this sport is I am kind of a natural leader, and being a natural leader coming into a world where there aren't many female leaders was a challenge. And I'm kind of happy with the footprints that I left and that are continuing to step all over that challenge.
What were some of those challenges that you faced as a woman? Like, what would be like an example of that?
Right, exactly. So again, it's just for me, I'm not I'm definitely not a feminist, because sometimes I believe that's not equality. I feel like it's a little bit too one-sided sometimes. And I'm somebody who's much more about the practice than the preach when it comes to gender, roles and hierarchies and all of that. So even when I got to fight sports, I didn't start a workout class. I didn't, drag people to come work out with me. I just worked out. I did, because I've done my workouts on my own since oh goodness, like since the high school. So I just would go, I would do my workouts, and then obviously the titles would come. So it wasn't like people were seeing the workouts and they looked fun and challenging and they wanted to try, or I looked strong. It's like I showed putting in the work, and then I showed with the results, and people kind of just started to filter in. And then that was obviously, the strength and conditioning was a little bit more easy based on me showing up and working out, and then titles. In a sense of, the more integration into the coaching aspect on the mats, I went to university for health science and sport exercise, but I did a focus in coaching. Like I was taught how to coach. On top of being an American athlete, you don't really make it if you're not coachable. I think that's really important for a coach to also be coachable. So I think that helped in a sense. I always had good relationships with my coaches. I would react well with what they were telling me / performing that. So there was definitely that aspect of it. And then, of course, we always start the women's program, right? The woman leader starts the woman class. She's not teaching the other classes, but she's starting the women's class, which, I did that, of course, too. And then I think the results that my females started to get, had a little bit of an edge on that. And of course, my ex was the owner of the gym, so my partner was the owner of the gym. So of course there was a trust, from him to me, where when I was injured, I would kind of, just start keeping the time or this and that. But again, because of how I was raised in sport, I know how to organize a practice. I know, what is too much and what is too little. I know how to pull back on days that need to be pulled back. So again, I think it was just showing up. Sometimes keeping your mouth shut is the best thing you can do, and just show up. And I'm a very big believer in actions speak louder than words, and I think that's kind of how I handle every challenge.
That's awesome. Maggie, I wanted to ask you what kind of legacy you want to leave in the sport, not just in jiu-jitsu, but being a coach now, you're dealing with many different sports. Like, what kind of legacy you want to leave for your students?
I think the legacy I want to leave is being seen as an equal and not a dominant female in the sport, because again, as much as we want to preach and do the kind of woman only things, to me, that's not equality, because it's kind of saying, why can't guys have a guys only class if we're going to do that? I want to leave a legacy where I'm a female that's involved in a male's world, and bringing females along with me, rather than doing things with and for females separately. So I kind of think that's the legacy I want to leave, is a very inclusive and integrated legacy in a world that is obviously now becoming more equal, but definitely in a male dominant world.
Yeah, talking about that, like, how do just a small question actually is, how do you think it would be easier? Because what I see on my gym, for example, a lot of the women, they don't feel comfortable doing the class with the men. Like, even today there was a girl there and she was like, oh my god, there are no girls in class, like what am I gonna do? And I'm like, you're fine, like you're completely fine. She was new, and I'm like, the professor can help you to pick your partners because you don't know anybody yet. But it's like, it is like a fear of a lot of the women. Like, how do you change their mindset as they're like coming into the gym? Because for me, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for like 8-9 years now, and since my first day, I was never the type of person that I'm like, I don't want to roll with the guys. I never had that problem, and my gym, there wasn't a lot of girls too. But it is a thing that a lot of the girls face today, and it's like, how do you change that mindset of them, for them to understand that it's fine, it's safe, and it's actually good for them to train with men? Because I think it's great.
Yes, oh, I agree. I agree. The issue a lot is, most people who are appointed to teach a class are good at jujitsu, right? They're good at jiu-jitsu. They're not actually taught how to be inclusive. They're not taught how to speak to people. They're not, some are natural at it and they do great, but not every competitor is a good professor, and not every professor is a good competitor. It's the same thing. Just because I can make you understand how to do an armbar does not mean I'm a good coach or a good professor, right? To me, it's like I said, there's the pie chart, and it's got to hit everything. So that's an education to our professors, right? And not just female, being the only female and being the new student is a perfect comparison. Hold their hand, like, not obviously hypothetically, that person needs to feel comfortable. It's not just like you said, you said it best. Oh, the professor, can pair you up. Yeah, that's the least of what they should be doing. They should be standing close while they're rolling, making sure they're giving the same amount of attention that they are to everybody else, even checking in, because again, if I walk on the mat, I'm not going to care. But like you're saying, there are those people who aren't comfortable being that only female. So that is completely, it's not the students, it's not their responsibility, it's the professor's responsibility to make sure that girl will want to come again, regardless if she's going to be the only one or not. I see a lot of the times, the professors kind of pair them with a student who's going to take care of them well, and they leave it. But that student isn't going to make them come back. It's the professor. So yes, pair them up with a student that's going to take care of them, but make sure you're coming back around to make sure they're okay, to make sure that they feel good. Don't make them feel like you put them off on someone who could handle them better. So for me, it's completely the professor.
Makes a lot of sense. I have a question. How do you combat, like, talking about women and like coming in and, obviously new to jiu-jitsu, how do you overcome, like, if they are paired up with a guy, that whole mentality of like the ego, right? Because that comes into play, especially if you're an aggressive woman, rolling, and you may not know something, or if you do know something, you've been there for a long time. I think those egos do play into it a lot. So how do you combat that? Like, what are your thoughts?
So I always look at the opposite, because I get this question asked at every single seminar, right? And we are always attacking from this side. It is so much harder for a man to roll with a female than a female to roll with a man. Physically harder for us, yes. But that's where we stop, instead of looking at the bigger. For us to get beat by a guy, that's not going to kill our ego. It's like, it's not an issue, right? It shouldn't be. But at the end of the day, we're in a world where guys shouldn't get beat by girls, and girls need to understand that. So it's about knowing who you can and cannot train with at the end of the day. There's gonna, and also not having an ego back. Like when I go to roll with guys, right? There's all different types. There's the guys that go too easy and are gonna let me do whatever I want. Okay, cool. Don't get upset about that. He doesn't know how to handle you. He doesn't know how to handle his strength. He's uncomfortable, right? So don't get mad at him. Practice what you want to practice, and then maybe never roll with him again. Because that's the other thing. You can always say no to anyone, ever, always, right? And then the other side of it, right, is we get the guys that are just too strong. Really? Tap as you would if it was a female beating. Like you know what I mean? Like if you don't want to tap to a guy that's stronger than you, you can't blame his ego. Because it is always going to be so much more uncomfortable for majority of the guys. Of course, we have men who should not be on the mat with women. We get it. There's going to be, just like there's bad doctors, bad jiu-jitsu people. It's everywhere. But majority of the time, especially in the more executive hobbyist class, that's where you get they're not inappropriate. They're just strong and have an ego, But most of the time, I always educate my women, and at seminars, I always say, you have to put yourself in the guy's position. It's way harder.
As a female, right? If say you're going to get somebody that does, obviously every guy, even if they're the same stature as you, they're going to be stronger than you no matter what. So if you say you're going to get somebody that is the same stature, and they do have an ego, do you kind of like, do you feed into that and just like let it happen, and you still roll with them because it's a good roll session, but you just don't challenge them as much so that they don't get too aggressive? Or do you just stay away from them? Like,
right. Yeah, no, there's like, especially as I got older in jiu-jitsu, the less people I rolled with. I would rather get 3 good rolls with the same person than 3 okay rolls, because I want to roll with different people. Right. And for me, my male training partners, that I'm equal with, they're all 20 to 30 pounds lighter than me, because I'm a girl. And if they're the same weight as me, they will be stronger, So that's the other issue that people have, is like, oh, well, me and my husband are the same height and similar weight. Cool. Add 20 pounds to it. Add 20 pounds, And I always tell people too, open mats, go crazy, whatever, have fun. But when it comes to your training, right? Shay, let's say you're a purple belt, you're my same weight, and you give me the best training. I'm going to roll with you, and then I'm going to go roll with a white belt that I can kind of play with. And then I'm going to come back to you. And then I'm going to go to one of the black belt guys that I know isn't going to hurt me. And it's going to be kind of my defense practice / cardio training. And then I'm going to come back to you. Like, that's the thing. To get better in jiu-jitsu, we have to roll with people who are going to make us better. And in order to get better, you have to know my game. If I'm rolling with a bunch of different people or people I can't do my game on, my game is never going to advance and it's never going to get better. And that happens a lot with girls too. Like, there's that girl you go hard with, you go with her maybe once because she asked or your professor told you to, and then you're running away from her. Why are you running away from her? Like, I've had 20 girls on the mat before, and like you see one of them going over and rolling with the guy, and I'm just like, how does that make any sense? So that's the other thing too. It's like there's a time to like go crazy and train with a bunch of people, but majority of the time, less is more.
That's amazing. It opened my mind a lot because a lot of the times I'm trying to go with different people because in my mind was like, it's better because it's different games, but that makes a lot of sense.
Wait, just to stop you there. So this is going to make it make even more sense, right? How many siblings are there in jiu-jitsu that are world champions? Yes. And it's not because they've always had a training partner. It's because they've always had the same training partner. Because if you and I train together every day, first we're starting with our A game until that doesn't work. So now you're adding the B game and the C game all the way from A to Z. That's how your game gets better, by training with the same person, not with a bunch of different people. Your game gets better by learning from a bunch of different people and of course competing and this and that. You can always learn something from everybody. But if you're, let's say, getting ready for, a camp, it's not, I'm going to make sure I roll with Shay once a day. No, I'm going to make sure I roll with Shay every other round so that she stops my A game and forces me to get all the way to E, F, and G before the round is done.
I got you, girl. Babby.
It's the same thing. How many times do you fight the same person? All the freaking time.
I'm like, I'm sorry, Shay, when I'm prepping for a competition, it's going to be you and me all day long. I love it.
That's it. You guys are going to get so good.
Oh my God, I love it. Maggie, for us to finish, I just want to ask you, what's BJJhood for you?
BJJhood for me is exactly what I'm talking about. In a sense, we need more markets, right? Especially females, right? There's 2 females sitting in front of me talking to another female about jiu-jitsu. Regardless if 5 people hear it or 1 million people hear it, this is what we need to keep putting jiu-jitsu on the mat, is people coming into our sport and creating different areas of opportunity, right? Podcasts, media content, all of those things. So for you guys are literally just another one of those stepping stones that is getting females to where, not just females, right? Not just females to where we need to be in jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu as a whole. So thank you guys for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. It was awesome to talk to you, to hear a little bit more about you. I hope we can see each other in competitions in the future, seeing you coaching there, meet in person.
Hey, and there's never like a bad reason to come to Miami.
Of course. I was there like a few months ago. I'm definitely coming back, and then I'll come to your gym.
Next time you guys are here, please let me.
I might be scared of you, just to let you know, Maggie.
You better be. Oh, perfect. If you like this episode, make sure you share with a friend. I'm sure everybody can learn a little bit from Maggie here today. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, and your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back next Thursday with another episode. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Would you like to share your story? Email us at bjjhoodpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at BJJhoodpodcast.